Quorum. Thank you.
Busy day. I've been all over.
Like to call.
Maybe.
Here, Andrew.
Mine's on.
I'd like to call to order the Milan Area Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, March 8th, 2023. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Board members Ms. Rosen-Leacher and Ms. Freight are absent this evening. We'll start with public comments. A reminder, this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you'll be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes, and I'll ask you to finish your thought when the timer goes off. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Are there any students who would like to address the board? Public members who would like to address the board?
Andrea Benink, and I'm addressing the board this evening as a parent. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to publicly comment tonight. I've been considering the roles of community, administration, and leadership a lot lately. And throughout this process, I've read a variety of articles and listened to numerous podcasts that have resonated with me. And I'd like to share some of my perspectives with the hopes that the community, the board, and the administration will take these thoughts into consideration. Most often we think of tension as a thing to avoid, but I recently listened to someone with a differing perspective. The speaker on this podcast noted that tension is good and necessary, and he was referring to politicians and journalists. But I think that this can be translated that tension is good and necessary between a community, a board, and administration. The community is responsible for holding the board and administration accountable for their decision and leadership. Likewise, the board is responsible for holding the administration accountable for their decisions and leadership. In the same way that good journalism will shed light in the political realm, the board and community should shed light on the administration and decisions of whatever organization they are charged with leading. Questions and requests for more information should not be something to treat with disdain, but should be understood to be a necessary component of a healthy organization. It can be hard to live and lead well with tension, and it can be uncomfortable. but respectful disagreement and tension show a willingness to faithfully carry out the duties to hold leadership accountable for the direction our district is taking, especially in regard to impressionable minds of children. Exercising respectful commentary and dialogue encourages more community members to engage at Board of Education meetings. More community involvement is something we should all be striving for. I also read an article on talking and listening when experiencing sharp disagreement. And this article noted that showcasing the process of how we discern and decide policy is as important as what is decided. Having a good, clear, transparent process is necessary so that, quote, even if people don't like or agree with what you decide, they'll feel like you respected them by taking them seriously and not avoiding them, ignoring them, or dismissing them, end quote. Considering that the Board of Education is deep in the decision-making process of several book challenges and appeals, its members and the administration would do well to be forthcoming in explaining how the resolution on tonight's agenda was drafted, how committee members for these book challenges were chosen, and how challenged materials have been supplied to the district. Transparency in regards to this topic may help to bridge the divide in the community by showing respect for the community members who have taken the time to speak out both for and against these materials. As stated, even if community members disagree with your decisions, at least they can be assured that the process of how the decision was made is transparent. On another note, as the Board of Education and Administration—
Thank you for your comment. Are there others?
Good evening, Rachel Hobbs. So it's interesting that Andrea was speaking about the resolution because I read it and I looked, my first thought was, where in the world did this come from? I don't understand how this could come and be placed in the board packet. It's clearly vague. It's very deceptive to the community. It's full of fluff and it's not supported by any statutory or legal precedents. I think you guys can do a better job. This is just a resolution that looks all legal, but it really isn't, and you're pulling the wool over the community's eyes, giving them the impression that you can do this. Again, this is a classic case of changing the policy without vetting it and in your favor. You have not considered the cases and the parents that have come before you on these challenges. I'm going to request that you not bring this resolution to a vote. It seems as if I don't think that you can because you don't have enough members to vote on it. But I would like for some public discussion to be had before you bring this for a vote, because you need to be transparent and you need to be open and you need to be in full compliance with the Open Meetings Act. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Annie Cruz. I'll follow up with both of what the previous parent said. I was very confused by this resolution to to halt policy 9130. It did not make sense to me because in my understanding, what it does is it just stops the process by which parents have to communicate to you on these book objections. So we're all aware that porn materials are protected by free speech under the U.S. Constitution, but as with all rights, there are limitations to free speech. And the state of Michigan has determined in the school code, MCL 380.1, Act 33 of 1978, that porn materials are not accepted in libraries. They're not acceptable in libraries because the exposure of said materials to minors leaves an impressionable mark and can and will have detrimental effects. So basically, having the materials that contain porn content is not a protected right. As a school, you don't have the constitutional right or duty to provide these explicit books to minors. So I disagree with your proposal that removes the parent's right to object to said materials and removes the process by which parents can hold the school board accountable for leaving these materials on the shelves. Can you explain to me and other parents listening why this process has been halted when an investigation of your process is currently active? Why do you think it's okay? Help me understand why you think it's okay to keep this type of explicit material on the shelves when the state constitution clearly states it's unlawful. I don't believe that this is a subjective question. We all have seen the pictures and we have heard the quotes from these books. I don't know if you've heard the philosophy, know better, do better. Follow the laws that are in place. Remove these books until the investigation is over. Then make the decision based on what the investigation has found, whether they need to stay or go. Keep your policy that you have in place, Policy 9130, so parents have the avenue to submit their concerns. Because basically, if you approve the halt of this policy, you are shutting down the voice of the parents to express their concern regarding these books.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
So when we inform the community of your official votes, we usually use your actual words. We use video from the YouTube channel. It's not our fault. The response is usually negative from that. Instead of reflecting on that, you guys choose to gaslight and deflect and blame us for causing tension and toxicity in the district. No, we're bringing awareness. There's a big difference. We don't summarize your words. We don't misrepresent your arguments. In many situations, we let you tell them your stance in your very own words. It's not our fault that so many people in this town are so unhappy with the things you guys are doing as a board. You keep trying to mischaracterize our intentions, which I get, really, I do. It's hard to get everyone to support your side if you told them the truth. That's why I'm so grateful you've made this easy for us. All we have to do is expose your views for what they are. It's not hard, and it doesn't require us having to manufacture anything radical. You provide us with plenty of material on a consistent basis. Like the 10-minute rant by Jan Kiger, where she waved her Bible around and then accused parents of shaming sexual assault victims into silence. All we did was share the video. And the interesting thing is that statement actually inspired some actual survivors from the community to come to meetings and tell you your stance on this was wrong, that you shouldn't use them as a reason these books should be in the schools. But the funny thing is, none of you mentioned that you changed your position on this after that, nor did you mention that perhaps we shouldn't have been accused of being victim shamers after all. No, you just stopped talking about it. Apparently, when you said you cared so much for sexual assault victims, you meant specifically the ones that agreed with you. Yet another accusation and manipulation of our position that has proven to be inaccurate. It has nothing more than a feeble attempt at deflecting from your misguided arguments. Seems since that didn't work out in your favor, you have decided to move on to yet another lie to try and discredit us. How about the accusation that we are inciting violence and that we encouraged people to send threatening messages? That was another deflection you've tried recently after you were humiliated with the videos of your actions going viral. But that didn't play well either, did it? So I noticed you're starting to change the language around that in the minutes. For example, the meeting minutes from the last meeting, this is how Secretary Heika chose to manipulate and misrepresent my public comment. Holly Valade commented on receiving threats herself and her belief that the board blamed commenters for the violent threats received by the board. All right, well, let's revisit that, shall we? Some of the words of yourself and your fellow board members in the past 2 months. Michelle Heika, difficult to compromise when the following language is thrown at you: disgusting, groomer, pervert. And once you reduce someone to something as horrific as a pervert or a groomer, it becomes very easy and incites some to physical threats. Also, Michelle Heika, stop with the hyperbole, name-calling, and incitement of violence. Carrie Macchio, there is no low that is too low. Attacks on teachers, public schools, board members, even students, as we've seen here tonight. So you tell me, were these statements all in my imagination, or did you all who made several comments that implied and accused us of inciting violence? Yet again, another abuse of power by this board misrepresenting us, which is, I guess, understandable that it's hard to remember everything you've said when you're constantly reinventing your position.
Hello, I'm Jan Kiger. I would like to congratulate our students on their NWA scores and to thank the staff and families and everyone that worked so hard to help them achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Are there others? All right. Next up on the agenda is routine matters for approval. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting on February 22nd, 2023.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Murray.
So moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 22nd, 2023. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, it's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 22nd, 2023. Ms. Heike. Sure. Yep.
Sislo.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray.
Yes.
Motion carries. 4-0.
Yeah, 4 is a quorum. 4 out of 7. Next up, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of February 22nd, 2023.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Heike.
It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of February 22nd, 2023. Again, these are in the envelope. Any questions or concerns? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of February 22nd of 2023. Ms. Heike.
Sislo.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
We can hand those to the center. Next up, I need a motion to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Murray.
So moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Any questions or concerns?
I just have one comment.
Yeah.
I just wanted the board to know that there were funds that were requested and received, federal funds that were requested and received in February, so you will see that in the February financial statements.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Any other questions or comments? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Ms. Heike.
Farrow.
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray.
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Next up is board organization. This is where we're going to talk about the board vacancy interview planning. With the resignation of Ms. Macchio, we have a vacancy. We advertised that to the community, and we received 11 applications for that vacancy. We need to fill that position within 30 days, or it becomes the responsibility of the WISD to fill that position. So we have received those applications. I have emailed those 11 applicants to see if they're going to be available at the March 22nd meeting for an in-person interview as required to do that in open session. Just for everybody's awareness, the candidates are Angela Chittister, Adam DeAngeli, Robin Eggman, George Melvin Elder IV, Daniel Hoover, Carrie A. Caravan Gutierrez, Cassie Pryor, Laura Rousseau, James M. Smith, Gary Tapke, and William E. Van Buren Jr. I apologize if I mispronounced anybody's name. So those folks will be present at the March 22nd meeting for an interview by the board. At your spot, you will see a handout that says the interview process for the board vacancy. And this will be relatively similar to how we filled the last vacancy, except that we just have more candidates. Last time we had 5 candidates, this time we have 11. So the idea is that we will pick a random order of the board members will be chosen to ask questions, and then a random order of the 11 candidates will be chosen. Basically, the candidates will be grouped into groups of 2 or 3, and then rotated as the questions are asked, so that either the candidates will be either answering these questions early on during the interview, during the middle of the interview, or at the end of the question. So it shouldn't give anybody an unfair advantage that they always have to go first, they always have to go last. So we believe this is the fairest way to ask these questions. So each board member will have a question that they ask of all 11 candidates during that time. With that, one of the things that we do need to discuss tonight is the length of time for the answers of those questions. Again, with 11 candidates and 5 board members that are going to ask questions, that is basically 55, a multiplier of 55 right there. So if we do a 1-minute answer, we're basically talking an hour of the interview. If it's a 1.5 minute answer, it's an 1.5 hour interview. And if we do 2 minutes per answer, it'd be a 2-hour interview. So are there any thoughts on the length of time to answer the questions?
I suggest we give 2 minutes.
I agree with Mr. Farrow. I think this is an important matter, and I would like to give the candidates as much time as possible to express their views.
Okay. And that is consistent with what we've done in the past. It was a 2-minute time limit when we did replaced the vacancy last time. So after all the questions have been asked and answered, each board member will be asked to rank the candidates 1 to 11. And that ranking will be based on the written answers that they provided to the board, which are the same questions that we ask of all candidates at the school board candidate sessions. And we've also asked them at the other vacancy interviews that we've had. So these are the same questions that we've used for quite a while. So there should be no surprises there. Again, so the board members will rank those candidates from 1 to 11 on cards. Those cards will be handed in, and then there will be a tally, and then there'll be a score for each candidate. And again, so the best candidate would be the best fit candidate would be 1, and then the last candidate would be 11. Those scores will be tallied, and then the idea is that basically we kind of cut that in half as we go. In order to weed out any, wild discrepancies in score. So we'll go from 11 to potentially 5 or 6 candidates to vote on, down to 3 or 4, 4 or 5, and then get down to eventually 2 or 3 that we would all vote on or provide those tallies on. And those tallies would be collected. We would do those tallies the same way each time. So basically, it's just you're going from 1 to 11 to 1 to 6. To 1 to 4 to 1 to 2. I mean, just depending on how the scores come out. So, and then the candidate that has the lowest score would be nominated and voted by the board to fill the vacancy the night of that meeting, which would be within the 30-day requirement of Ms. Macchio's resignation. So my thought is every board member needs to come up with a question that they will be asking. I will serve as the moderator as far as the keeping track of the order of the candidates, making sure time is followed, and then to fill in if necessary if we don't have all the members here to ask questions. So those are the thoughts. Are there any questions or concerns with how we'll move forward with the interview process for the board vacancy?
No.
So with that, with a approximately 2-hour interview, which would just be the questions themselves, not including the voting, that's obviously going to be a longer meeting. We will have a reinstatement hearing that evening as well. So the thought with that is that we begin the meeting at 5:30 to have the reinstatement hearing where we would call the meeting to order. We would have the Pledge of Allegiance, go into closed session, and hear the reinstatement, and come back into open session, make a decision on the reinstatement, and then recess until 7 o'clock, such that we have enough time for everybody to arrive, the candidates to arrive, so that the rest of the normal business would happen at 7. The reason that it's just easier to extend a regular meeting, the time, instead of voting to have 2 separate meetings. So that's the idea, is to go ahead and have start the meeting earlier at 5:30 to consider that reinstatement, and then start our regular business at 7. Any questions regarding that? Right, so in that regard, we need to have, you'll see at your table as well, there's a notice of change of a regular meeting of the Milan Area Schools Board of Education. So I need a motion to approve of a change of time for the March 22nd, 2023 meeting as detailed in the attachment provided, which will be posted and basically says that the meeting start time on March 22nd is going to be 5:30.
Go ahead.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Heike.
It's been moved and supported to approve the change of time for the March 22nd, 2023 regular meeting as detailed in the attachment provided. Any further discussion? Right, it's been moved and supported to approve the change of time for the March 22nd, 2023 regular meeting as detailed in the attachment provided. Ms. Heike?
Heike, yes. Murray?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, next up on the agenda in the area of personnel and leadership, we have a teacher appointment. I need a motion to appoint the following person to the teaching position listed in base salary effective March 20th, 2023. And this is Michelle Bowman as a Paddock Behavior Specialist.
Moved by Murray.
Support by Farrow.
It's been moved and supported to appoint the following person to the teaching position listed in the base salary listed effective March 20th, 2023. Mr. Gaywell?
As you know,
I think they go to sleep.
Okay. As you know, last month we promoted our behavior specialist at Paddock into the director position of the Paddock Early Childhood Center. We immediately posted that position, and we were lucky to get several very qualified candidates. We're excited to bring the candidate to you tonight. Michelle Bowman, as you look at her resume, she's worked in one district for numerous years. She's received several awards there. She's accepted several promotions there. Right now, she moves and services multiple districts because she works for an ISD and she wants to have one home and have one building that she works in. And so that's her reason for coming. She's very qualified, and we're excited to be able to bring someone so quickly to fill that vacancy.
Any questions or concerns? All right, it's been moved and supported to appoint the following person to the teaching position listed and base salary listed effective March 20th, 23. This is Michelle Bowman of the Paddock Behavior Specialist. Ms. Heike?
Heike, yes. Murray?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Freight? Oh, wrong one. Farrow. I
Yes.
got the wrong one, sorry. Motion carries 4-0.
Next up is I need a motion to extend Superintendent Gearbaugh's contract by 1 year through June 30th, 2028.
Moved by Heike.
Support by Pharaoh.
It's been moved and supported to extend Superintendent Gearbaugh's contract by 1 year through June 30th, 2028. Just so everyone is aware, this is required contract language that prior to April 1st of each year, the board needs to consider taking official action to extend his employment for an additional year. This is standard contract language in almost all superintendent agreements throughout Michigan. This does not set any salary figures or change any language of the contract. And again, this extension would restore the 5th year to his contract, and the new ending date would be June 30th, 2028. Any questions or concerns regarding the superintendent contract extension? All right, it's been moved and supported to extend Superintendent Gearbaugh's contract 1 year through June 30th of 2028. Ms. Heike?
Murray,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Pharaoh,
Yes.
Heike, yes. Motion carries 4-0.
All right. Next up on the agenda is the Policy 9130 review as included in Attachment A, which I will read. Whereas the district and board have received several challenges seeking to remove or restrict access to district library books, the board has adopted Policy 9130, which includes a procedure for responding to library book challenges. Number 3, the district and the board recognize that removing or restricting access to library books implicates important constitutional questions. Number 4, the district and the board have endeavored to comply with all constitutional and legal mandates by faithfully following the procedures in Policy 9130. Number 5, despite the district's and the board's efforts, the board is aware that a criminal complaint was filed against the district and district officials alleging that allowing students to check certain books out of the library constitutes criminal activity. Now therefore be it resolved that number 1, the board authorizes and directs the superintendent and district legal counsel to seek guidance from appropriate local, state, or federal agencies about whether allowing students to check out certain books out of the library constitutes criminal activity. Number 2, the board suspends that portion of Board Policy 9130 that addresses library book challenges until further action of the board. Number 3, the board directs administrators to ensure that no book is removed from the library, nor is access to any book restricted unless expressly authorized by the board. This paragraph does not apply to any book that was removed from the library, withdrawn from circulation, or to which access was restricted prior to this resolution. Number 4, the board finds that this resolution is necessary and appropriate to ensure that all decisions related to removing or restricting access to library books is consistent with constitutional requirements and is not based on the threat of criminal prosecution. Number 5, administrators are directed and authorized to implement all terms of this resolution are delegated all necessary authority to do so. And number 6, all resolution and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. I need a motion to approve and need a motion in regards to that attachment.
Moved by Pharaoh.
Support by Heike.
It's been moved and supported to approve the resolution as provided by the Troon Law Firm PC as included in Attachment A. Discussion.
Well, I'll start. I fully believe that the district is not in violation of any statute as it relates to any of these books. In the current climate, however, I believe we should seek guidance on our obligations and to provide that finality to this ongoing debate that we're having in these board meetings as to what those obligations are, what the Constitution requires, what the statute requires, This way, I feel like if we get this guidance, we'll be able to use that guidance to guide us down our path. Additionally, and let me say, this current climate is very active. I mean, there were just comments on Facebook just in the last week or two that once board members are criminally charged, then maybe they'll, listen. So this is an ongoing issue, and there are some very vocal people who are pushing for this. Additionally, I believe that our teachers, our administrators, and particularly our librarians have a right to do their jobs without the threat of criminal charges anytime they pick out a book that someone in the community might find objectionable. That's not the way a library works. That's not the way librarians work. And I would like our librarians to be able to continue their job the way they have in the past. I do have one question, though, Andrew.
Yes.
In regards to some comments earlier, suspending this policy, it doesn't prevent community members from submitting their charges or their challenges, right? They can still submit them, but we won't act on them or form a committee until we get this guidance and reinstate the policy. Is that right?
That's correct.
And let me add to this also. Not only do all the administrators, the staff, and the librarians have the right to do their job without this threat, I don't feel comfortable forming a committee who everyone's demanding to know who's on these committees. I don't feel comfortable asking community members to volunteer their time on a committee when, if a community member is unhappy about their recommendation, that then they'll go file a criminal charge against them. So I just feel like everyone needs some stability, everyone needs some guidance, and I think this is the best way to do that.
And also to your point, in number 3, it said that none of this is going to apply to any book that was removed from the library, withdrawn from circulation, or to which access was restricted prior to this resolution. So I think Ms. Bennick brought up a good point in regards to tension. And my view on this is that there's tension between these statutes. And the board is seeking guidance on these statutes so that we can move forward with this business. The board desires to follow the statutes to the best of its ability, and when there's tension between those statutes, it's the board's responsibility to protect the district and get guidance on those statutes so that we can move forward. So really, I mean, my view on this is a tension between statutes that needs resolution for us so that we can move forward. Other comments? So, Anita, it's been moved and supported to approve the resolution as provided by Troom Law Firm, PC, and included as attachment A, which was read. Ms. Heike.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Next up on the agenda is the book study of Why Meadow Died. Again, this was a book that was recommended by some parents and purchased for the board to review in regards to school safety and the school shooting that took place in Florida, just a devastating event. We've reviewed the beginning of the book in chapters 1 and 2, and today we are going to be reviewing chapters 3 and 4. Just to start, in regards to chapter 3 was, in my view, was basically how the authors of the book met. It's Andrew Pollack, who's the father of Meadow, who is the student who was shot and killed, and Max Eden, who's an education reform researcher. The chapter extensively discussed media coverage of the shooting, including a television interview with the Broward County Sheriff, where the interviewer asked about the role of this Promise program in Broward County. And just remember, this is something that we've talked about in regards to this book. This is a program that the county and the schools agreed to, which led to less punitive means of discipline for students. During this chapter, the author has mentioned many times how unfortunate he feels that the media feeds into the culture war aspect of firearms. When he knows that there's other things that contribute to these school shootings, he feels that in general the media goes into covering a culture war of firearms. In chapter 4, we met a student, Kenneth Preston, who's a 19-year-old homeschooled student who pursued a story about safety money that the Broward County schools received, and it was delayed for this school and being spent on a fire alarm system that may have kept students from running into the halls and being shot. So he did a lot of investigative work in regards to this. He spoke with school board members and the superintendent. They recanted the information that they gave him and disputed the story that he was writing. He was able to make a public comment at a school board meeting about his research, and eventually Kenneth, at the end of the chapter, he connects up with the author Max Eden, and I'm sure that we'll hear more about their relationship as the book moves forward. So that just kind of sets off what the two chapters were about. Do others have comments on the book?
Mr. Sislo,
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
you gave a very good summary of both chapters, so I don't have much to add. One thing that I wanted to mention was there's a consistent theme about Broward School District, and that is that they move towards a different kind of discipline, one that would not just punish students, but also help them address the root causes of their misbehavior. Max Eden, who's an education specialist, asserted that test scores had increased, suspensions had plummeted, graduation rates had soared by, quote, faking the numbers, and that, quote, the numbers were not real. There's discussion about the roles of policy, the move towards leniency. Again, like you said, Andrew, there's a lot of criticism over the Broward County's Promise program. One thing that I caught in Chapter 3 was that the policy encouraged warnings and consultations with parents, programs on conflict resolution instead of arresting students for actual crimes. The shooter's crimes, in this instance within the school, were apparently not brought to the attention of the police. In Chapter 4, Kenny Preston, who is a student journalist, said that there was a lot of people looking for answers to the same questions, and some of those questions include, what if the shooter had been arrested? What if the administrators had decided not to ignore his behavior? Had the shooter faced some sort of criminal charge? Could that have stopped him from legally buying a gun? You referenced the alarm system at the school district. This student journalist referenced an updated alarm system within the school district as having been delayed and not including what's called an active trigger mechanism. When the alarm is activated, it doesn't go off instantly. It sends a signal to the office and gives time for the staff to decide whether the alarm should go off. Not all of the teachers on the third floor in this high school had recognized the sound of gunshots. So when the fire alarm went off, several teachers had sent their students into the hallway thinking that it was just a drill. The student journalist also indicates that various safety projects within Broward schools had been significantly delayed. The superintendent, Mr. Runcie, disputes that. And I think you've covered the balance of Chapter 4. But that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow.
I think, as we read these chapters and you get more into the policies of the Broward County schools, you do see the role that the Promise program played, or at least is alleged to have played. I think the role it played. I'm just going to say that. is, so everyone knows, according to the book, and I haven't read the program or seen the discipline matrix, but according to the book, the matrix prevented school officials from calling the police even when a student committed a misdemeanor on campus. And then it was revealed in the book, staff members told the reporters that that policy also extended to felonies. So even a student who committed a felony on campus would not, the administration would not call the police, and they would not allow them to arrest the student on campus. And so there is some discussion from the school resource officer about how they felt their hands were tied because there was very little they could do because of the Promise program as well. And so you can see that how this is very problematic. And I think that it's important, as I think you said, Andrew, maybe not, but I think it's important to point out that we don't have a program like that here. And so that's a big difference already between Broward County Schools and the Milan School District.
I didn't talk about that this evening, but I've said it
Someone
before.
did recently, sorry.
Yeah. Ms. Murray?
Yeah, in trying to look through chapters 3 and 4, again, through the lens of our district and our experience, the author writes, it's on page 43, he writes, he was talking about like incentive and punishments, if you want to call it that, or incentives and consequences for districts, financial ones, for changing or creating improvement in their discipline numbers. And so the quote here on 43 says, "With those policy levelers and incentives in place, and with ever more money flowing to woke conferences and training programs, school district leaders across the country learned that the fastest path to their career advancement was to fake statistical progress for minority students while passionately decrying privilege and institutional racism." And so there's a lot to unpack even in just that little paragraph, but I had experience myself teaching around this time period, or like during the second Obama administration, when No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top programs, like there were financial incentives to districts, and it was in their best interest to be able to move students forward and reduce those numbers, absolutely. And I agree with the author to a certain extent that monetary incentives to districts are extremely problematic when you dangle a money carrot and threaten to punish or reward. It is a breeding ground for dishonesty. And so the author then talks about some Washington, D.C. schools who had misrepresented graduation numbers to kind of like build this case around the incentives and consequences. So yes, I agree that that is bad policy, but I disagree with the author here that minority students don't need to be focused on necessarily, or that privilege and institutional racism don't play a part in our disciplinary systems, and that I think here, like bringing it back to Milan and what we're trying to do with our restorative justice programs in our schools is to work in concert with our law enforcement. We don't turn a blind eye to, infractions that have legal consequences, and we try to apply tenets of restorative justice along with whatever legal requirements might exist for that student at that time. I also really agreed, he brings up a number of times just the media response and the tendency to just dig down into yet another culture war anytime we experience one of these tragedies as a nation. And we've recently experienced that as a state. Like we have had tragedies very close to home, and I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what happens. We sit in our silos and we regurgitate our talking points, and I am eager for the day when we move past that and have some real change around that. I think that's it for me right now.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions or comments in regards to the book? All right, I did make a mistake in the agenda. I skipped the superintendent evaluation, planning, and goal setting, so we will move back up to number 3 of the for the superintendent evaluation, planning, and goal setting. Recently, the board completed a evaluation of Mr. Gearbaugh. He received a rating of effective. There are several areas that we evaluate Mr. Gearbaugh in regards to that. There's governance and board relations, there's community relations, there's staff relations, there's business and finance, and there's instructional leadership. There's also student achievement, and as well as progress towards district goals that are set, as well as what's in the strategic plan. So in regards to that, now it's time to start planning for the next round of Mr. Gearbaugh's evaluation. As recommended by the Michigan Area School Board Association, Michigan Area School Boards, they recommend that we look at these. There's several domains underneath each of those sections that we evaluate Mr. Gearbaugh on a rubric, which is very similar to how our students are evaluated for grades, and then also our teachers for how they perform. So again, underneath each of those groups, there's subdomains, and our facilitator recommends that we look at those subdomains, look at areas that should be a priority focus as Mr. Gearbaugh moves forward, and then maybe there's some things that he does well at that we need to just have a continued focus on. So I did ask board members just to provide the subdomains so that those could be collated to start our discussion this evening. We're not going to be taking a vote on these. This is more just of a discussion as we move forward to get some consensus as we move forward with Mr. Gearbaugh's evaluation, which we'll have quarterly updates on in closed session. Ms. Murray, she just recently finished the training last night, so she will be observing as we talk through this. I do have the ratings from Ms. Rosen-Leacher and Ms. Freight, or the subdomains that they were interested in. These are summarized in a sheet that's at your seat. So basically, when we got those, I asked each board member to submit five of these subdomains for review, and there was basically 10 of those subdomains that came back. The recommendation is that we generally focus on 4 to 5 of these subdomains in regards to Mr. Gearbaugh's evaluation. So you can see in the summary, one of the 2 of the top mentions received four mentions. One was in instructional leadership in regards to student attendance. Another one was in the area of governance and board relations for policy involvement. Then there were 3 domains that received 3 mentions, and that was support for students in the area of instructional leadership, communication with the community in regards to community relations, recruitment in regards to staff relations. And then a few of these received 2 mentions, which were student feedback, curriculum, and DEI initiatives. And then we had 1 mention each for staff communication and parent feedback. So we'll have a brief discussion about this, come to some consensus so that we can formalize this as we move forward. And again, the thought was that there's 4 to 5 of these that we identify as we move forward. So does anybody want to talk in regards to their, I'll speak to my domains that I had put because I had a student focus, a community focus, a staff focus, and then a board and superintendent relationship focus. Definitely in regards to support for students. It's obviously, in this era that we're in, coming out of the shutdowns in regards to COVID, I think we're all aware of the increased needs of students in regards to their emotional health. So I think that's something that we need to continue as a school district. One of the other things that I thought was interesting was the attendance in general. Although Milan has decent attendance, there are different ways that various schools calculate attendance, which was something that was new to me. So that's something that that the board was interested in. I'm also the communication with community. We have the new district committee has been formed for the communications committee. Mr. Gearbaugh is actively working with that, getting that up and going as we work through that. And then obviously the continued retention and recruitment of the quality teachers and staff that we have at Milan School. So those were the ones that I was looking at.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Mr. Farrell.
So the top 5 areas of focus seem pretty clear, which would be E8, A1, E9, B2, C5. So we would give Mr. Gearbaugh 4 or 5 of these items, and that would be focus areas for the next year?
That's correct.
Okay. And then for community transparency, the areas that I provided to the board include areas of improvement for Mr. Gearbaugh, included policy, student attendance, student feedback, staff relations and communication, and staff recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Others, or I guess Ms. Heike?
It's me. Yeah. So my domains were, my first domain was instructional leadership and support for students. I'm particularly focused on the supports that we have for our students who have an IEP or a 504, or those students who are on the verge and may need those supports as well. I also included, my second choice was communication with the community. I want to keep this path that we've started down rolling forward, and with Mr. Gearbaugh using the communications committee and helping us to continue to work on our communication with the community. My third one was the student attendance. This was an issue that came up just before COVID, and I think it kind of got lost in COVID. We do have historically very good attendance, but focusing on attendance, you can't learn if you're not here. And so one of the ways to help our students is to find ways, figure out why some students aren't coming, particularly those who are habitually absent, and what, if anything, we can do to help with that situation. Then my fourth focus was on curriculum. I think that we've been talking a lot about learning loss. Our test scores, as I said at the last meeting, mentioned, we have made great strides in raising those test scores, but I do think we should be focusing on the curriculum particularly, and I'm always confused as to whether this should fall under curriculum or if this should fall within support for students, but I am particularly focused on the transitions and the curriculum as we transition from Paddock to Simons, then Simons to the middle school, and the middle school to the high school. If any of you have had a student that have made that progression, they're very different schools, as they should be, but I want to make sure that because we had talked about this quite a while ago pre-COVID, but making sure that that curriculum is aligned across the district so that students are prepared, and those transitions, we can make those situations as seamless as possible. That's why I'm always not sure if that's a curriculum issue or if that's a student support issue, and maybe it's both. Right? Maybe it's both. So those were the reasons that I included those particular domains.
So again, like Mr. Farrow said, we do have consensus with the top 5 of student attendance, policy involvement, support for students, communication with the community, and recruitment. So those will be the areas of focus. Obviously, this can be revisited Again, this is an evaluation by consensus, so as we go through the quarterly feedback with Mr. Gearbaugh, if we need to adjust these, we will certainly do that as we move forward. So, all right. Next up on the agenda is the strategic plan scorecard update. So again, with the quarterly review of Mr. Gearbaugh, he presents the strategic plan scorecard update, and he has provided that as part of the agenda packet, and he's going to walk us through some highlights of that strategic plan scorecard.
Thank you. The scorecard update that's included in your board pack as an attachment will be posted on the district website tomorrow. It's based off of the scorecard that you presented to me in the format, and so my job is to, one, change the color coding of the different sub-pieces of each goal, and so the community knows that's actually done by the board during each evaluation or quarterly update checkpoint. So the board discusses and determines whether those objectives under each goal are considered red, green, or yellow. And at the very bottom of the scorecard, green means that the objective has been met, yellow means that the objective is on track, and red means that the objective has not been met. So the first thing that I did is I updated those colors to the colors that the board decided during my evaluation. And then my job is to go in and fill in all of the potential data updates that we have for all of the different pieces. So just talking through this quickly, if you look at academic programs, I did add the 2022 NWEA CGPs, conditional growth. I also added the M-STEP and PSAT student growth percentiles. I will note that the state did not calculate this year SGPs for upper elementary students. So that's why it says no data. It's not available to us because the state did not provide that data to us. So I updated the NWEA data, I updated the M-STEP and PSAT data, I also updated the SAT data. We cannot update the AP course data yet because obviously those courses and tests are not completed for this school year at this time. The next section that the board wanted to have reports on are the participation rates in extracurriculars. And so what I did is so that you could have a comparison from year to year. After each item, you'll see that there are two numbers in parentheses. The first number is the 21-22 school year, which is last year, and the second set of parentheses is the 22-23 school year, so that you can kind of see our participation this year compared to our participation last year. Obviously, a few of those are still blank because those events have not yet occurred. The next section is the promotion rate. We can't put a new promotion rate in place yet because we're not at the end of the school year. However, I did add the 2022 graduation rate that is determined by the state of Michigan and audited. And Milan High School's graduation rate was 93.6% for the 2022 graduation year. As you can see, our history, we kind of rebounded now back to where we were pre-COVID, and so that's nice that our graduation rate has rebounded back where we would like it to be. In the learning environment and culture, the major pieces of data that you wanted reported were attendance, and so remember, this is the percent of students in attendance on average during each month. It is important to note that while most of our attendance percentages are north of 90%, I think Ms. Heike made the point, and I agree, that doesn't necessarily highlight any chronic absence situations that we have. And so while our focus will be on attendance, and I appreciate the board selecting that subdomain as a focus area, our focus is not going to be on attendance in general. It's going to be working with our students who are chronically absent and trying to help their families determine and solve issues that cause their students to be absent. Chronically absent, the definition of that is absent more than 10% of the school year. So while our attendance rates are similar to a lot of districts, our chronically absent percentages are a little bit higher than other districts, and so that will be the focus as we work on student attendance. But again, you have those average attendance rates. The next item that was asked to be updated on is the disciplinary action, and you can see for each month, for each building, the number of in-school and out-of-school suspensions. So I did receive that information from the administration of each building. You will see that the big highlight here is that our middle school, with some changes in how they're handling discipline and making sure that they are addressing it, and providing students with an understanding of what discipline will be issued and really working with our middle school students. We do see a decrease in our middle school suspensions this year, both in school and out of school. And that's due to a lot of hard work of the staff, the administration, and truly the student body improving behavior at the middle school this year. The next item is ongoing learning environment and culture initiatives. There were a couple of things added there, but not a tremendous amount. A lot of those are ongoing from year to year and programs that we have in place to help our students in the learning environment. Under communications with community engagement, we were asked to discuss current communication methods, and those are listed. I will tell you, board, that in the end of year survey that we do, that we started last year with K-12 Insight, they do have a series of questions that deal with communication with the community, and we are going to be able to add those to our survey this year. We won't be changing any of the other questions so that we can have continuous data from year to year in all of the other areas, but we are allowed to add some communication questions to that survey, which will give us some good feedback for me to use with the communication committee as we're looking at how to improve our communication with the community. The next section is personnel and leadership. Under that category, I was asked to provide the new hires that we have in the district. The new hires that we have in the district, as well as those that have resigned or retired. And so those lists are provided to you. These are all of the folks that were hired or resigned or retired from the last day of school last year until this point of this year. So that's kind of all of the new staff for this school year. And then the last thing is in finance and operations. We have some initiatives that we work on to make sure that our facilities are kept up to standards. We have the district fund balance reported, and then we have the fund balance above 10%. I was able to update the second set of numbers there. They are now audited numbers for the district fund balance and the fund balance above 10%. I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions on the updated scorecard, I can answer them.
Any questions or concerns? You will notice that there's several of the objectives underneath each of the areas are green, so that'll be a future conversation. Those objectives were formed during the strategic plan, so obviously if they have been accomplished, we need to revisit those and perhaps look at new objectives under each of those areas, so that'll be something that we'll be considering at a future board meeting. So progress has been made on the strategic plan, and we appreciate that. All right, next up on the agenda is back to public comment. Again, this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you'll be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes, and I'll ask you to finish your thought when the timer goes off. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Are there any students who would like to address the board? Public members who would like to address the board?
Andrea Benning. I want to carry on from the comments when I ran out of time at the last public comment session and then add to them as well. I'd like to share these quotes on leadership that reference partnership and engagement from Paul Schmidt in Everybody Leads. Leadership is not about a position that one is entitled to have. It is about a process in which one takes a responsibility to engage. And from the Friends National Resource Center, shared leadership involves a true partnership between parents and staff members who share responsibility for the process and outcomes of the group or team. I encourage our administration, our Board of Education, and our community to reflect on how you are engaging well with one another in regards to respectfully working through the tension of differing values and the decision-making process. How you are building trust with transparency in your processes and policies that affect the entire community, and how you are seeking to build shared leadership through meaningful engagement. I want to add some comments about some very serious concerns that I have in regards to President Sislow's comment that the board's duty is to protect the district. That is incredibly concerning to me, because I thought the duty of the Board of Education was to ensure that educational duties are being carried out in the best interest of the students. In fact, a brief search of duties from school boards brought me to the nsba.org, which states, quote, "The school board represents the community's voice in public education. It sets the standard for achievement, incorporating the community's view of what students should know and be able to accomplish," end quote. And the masb.org states that these areas are board duties: goal setting, policy, designate and evaluate the superintendent, budget, curriculum, staffing and appraisal, and facilities. I think that this Board of Education would do well to reflect on what your actual duties are to the Milan area schools, the students, and the community. It is not to protect the district, it is to serve the community and represent the community well. Honest reflection in these areas can truly lead to growth, positive change, and better educational outcomes in this district. Thank you for your time and consideration.
I'll respond. I agree with you, Ms. Bendick. I apologize. I mean, my explanation in that is that it's a part of the board, and all the other things that you explained are roles of the board as well. When people have contacted me about becoming a board member, there's several people that have contacted what the roles and responsibilities are, and those are things that I have mentioned. And I totally agree. I mean, there's a wide multitude of things that that the board is responsible for, and the board is responsible for making sure that the district follows statutes, the Constitution. So it is a portion of it. It's not the only thing. I appreciate you for calling me out on that comment. I sincerely apologize. I'm just saying it's one of the things that the board is responsible for. So I appreciate your comment. Others?
Annie Cruz. I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Heike and Mr. Sislo, for responding to my concerns regarding the proposal and explaining some reasons or the positions behind what the proposal is. And while I don't necessarily agree with them, I do appreciate that transparency and the comments related to that. But I'm curious, can you either tell us in your board comments or reply in an email as to what is the guidance you're seeking from the law firm or related to the halting that portion of the proposal relating to book objections? And then how do you know how long until we receive that anticipated guidance? And will that guidance be lawful and enforceable, or what are the parameters related to that? And then I know that we had the scorecard included with our minutes, but were you talking about something related to Superintendent Gearbaugh? And I just feel like something you were talking about related to Mr. Gearbaugh we didn't have in our minutes. Was it related to an evaluation or something like that, or a strategic plan update? I mean, I know the scorecard is one thing, but there was some other mention of some documents that I thought we had seen in the past but weren't provided tonight. I'm sorry I don't have the exact word on what that is, but if you could enlighten me, that would be great.
Great. Thank you for your comment.
So interesting with this board resolution and the discussions that you guys had about it, well, the little bit of discussion that took place. Just wanted to mention that with what Michelle Heike mentioned, librarians are exempt from any criminal investigation. I'm pretty confident that actually you knew that when you made that comment. Both of us are aware of the fact that they're exempt. Therefore, you making a comment about being concerned about them being able to do their job seems a little bit insincere and maybe a little bit like misinformation to me. I'm also not aware of any teacher being charged unless you put them on the committee that I'm not aware of. Actually, a lot of teachers are agreeing with us, and they also have concerns about these books. One person, as far as I know, one person did ask to know who the committee members were. They were told absolutely not. They were not going to be releasing those names. As far as I know, that was the end of that. So again, another statement that I feel is a little bit misleading when you say that you didn't want to ask anyone to be on a committee that might be outed when it was made very clear that the answer was no, and it was left at that. And for Tom Farrow, wow, this is so crazy, because wasn't it the last meeting when you used your board comment time to tell us we should not be using our public comments to read these books to you because there's a policy in place for us to challenge them, so we don't need to read them to you. And at the very next meeting, you just voted to remove that policy to be able to challenge those books. It's interesting. So you don't get to tell us what we can and cannot speak at public comment. And if these books are going to continue to be on the shelves, then maybe they should be continued to be read to you at every board meeting. And then also, nothing has changed in the Constitution as far as providing pornographic material to children. So when you put this policy in place to begin with, that was already the case. So I'm not sure why all of a sudden now you're thinking that that policy is not adequate. If you are saying that we are alleging that you are violating law, then yeah, I mean, if we're just alleging it, then what are you worried about? It's because you actually know. You've had over a month to deal with this with legal counsel. You had over 2 hours last meeting that you were able to deal with this with legal counsel, supposedly, based on what Andrew Sislo said. So I'm just curious, how much longer do you need with legal counsel to figure out whether or not to take out books that discuss the white shit dripping off someone's dick from children? How many more times do we need to discuss that? And now the fact that we have, what, 30-something plus books that we're still discovering that are in the library that are also very explicit and violent, those are not even going to be removed now when we submit a challenge. At least before, if you were going to sit on the challenge, it would be removed in the meantime. Now you're not even going to remove it? Good. Glad I know that. So we'll make sure to work that to our advantage. Also, I want to know, does this apply to low-demand books that are removed? Because I also know you're removing some of these books quietly without telling us.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening, Kirk DeMars. I wasn't here in time to hear the first public comment, but it must have been really great. I appreciate you, Mr. Sislo, apologizing because I was going to address concern with your comment as well. I believe our tension is actually elsewhere. It's moral, guys. The whole tension has been moral the whole time. Obviously, communities probably throughout time have differed on morality, but that's really what this is about. It's not tension between statutes, sir. I have beef with that comment too. You know, you guys long ago could have made a decision to remove books. You know, what we want to define as pornographic or immoral or whatever semantics we want to use. You know, kids looking at nudity is not healthy for them. Okay, and that's the bottom line on it. The fact that we're going through all this discussion tonight, it's another means of moving the goalposts. That's all it is. Anybody sitting in here can see it's a moving of the goalposts. What was just referenced about Mr. Farrow, he was blatant about the fact that we have a procedure. And what happened when the people addressed the procedure, sir? Now you're moving the goalposts. That's all that's happening here. That's not democratic. That's not anything that our country has been established on. This is about morals. And the fact that you guys don't like to hear that there's some people in the community that don't appreciate their children possibly seeing some of this stuff.
Thank you for the comment. Are there others? All right, thank you for those comments this evening. Next up is student board representative comments. Ms. Powell?
Sorry, do you want to go?
Or Ms. Farrow? Ms. Farrow first, sure.
Congrats to the boys varsity basketball team for making it to the district semifinals. Upcoming events include World Down Syndrome Day on March 21st. The Milan High School students can show their support by wearing crazy socks to school and earn a reward at lunch. The Milan High School Theater is performing Mamma Mia on March 10th, 11th, 17th, and 18th at 7 p.m. and March 12th and 19th at 2 p.m. You can purchase your tickets now at mhs-productions.com. Next week are tryouts for our Milan High School spring sports. You can find more information about this on the Milan High School Athletics website. Thank you.
Ms. Powell?
There's a lot to read here.
I think you just need to get close.
Okay, there we go. There's a lot to read here. Lots of congratulations are in order. First, I would like to say, save the date. The Milan Middle School presents James and the Giant Peach Jr. You'll be able to see the show Friday through Sunday. The show times are 7 p.m. Friday and Saturday and 2 p.m. on Sunday. All tickets are $5 for all of the shows, and it is cash only. Congratulations to the MMS Choir for receiving a Certificate of Merit at the District Choral Festival. Cheer tryouts are being held for the fall season, the 9th through 11th in the middle school competition gym, the 9th and 10th from 5:30 to 9 p.m., and the 11th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. All 8th through 11th graders are welcome to try out. Congratulations to Allie Molina, who signed for soccer today at to the Michigan Tech University. Congratulations to Flannery Wayne, who signed to Hope College football last Friday. Congratulations to the boys swim and dive for finishing off their regular season with a runner-up finish at SMISL Championship. They placed second with 335 points. Congratulations to Rachel Pelledo for placing 26th in the state out of 60 individual bowlers. And congratulations to Angelina Pena, who won her third consecutive state champion, defeating Lake City, Bad Axe, DeWitt, and South Lyon East on her way to the title. Oh, that's for wrestling, by the way.
Awesome list. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. Next up is superintendent comments. Mr. Gearbaum.
Okay, just a few things to share with you. First, I want to thank the board for the contract extension and your continued support. Several of my student ones, thank you. I love it when students bring up student Accomplishments, I'll repeat them quickly. Girls bowling, we did have a huge accomplishment. Rachel Palado finished 40th out of 60 bowlers at the state individual finals. In girls wrestling, exactly, Angelina Pena won her 3rd consecutive state championship, and we are excited to congratulate her. We have several boys headed to the MHSAA State Swimming and Diving Meet on March 10th and 11th, and we look forward to sharing their successes at a future meeting. And also, the Milan High School FFA sponsored a staff breakfast on Thursday, March 2nd. The students and staff prepared and served a wonderful meal, and the event was professional and very appreciated by the high school staff. Board, Milan Area Schools has 2 board members who are receiving achievement awards from the Michigan Association of School Boards. These board members will receive their awards at an upcoming Washtenaw Association of School Boards meeting. They are Carrie Macchio, who earned a level 6 Master Platinum Award, which means that she completed all of the courses in levels 1 through 5, 19 advanced classes, and a minimum of 813 educational credits. Betty Rosenleacher is earning a level 1 Certified Board Member Award, which means that she completed all 9 100-level classes. And Betty Rosenleacher also earned a level 2 Award of Merit, which means she completed all 9 of those classes and an additional 45 educational credits. Legislatively, on Monday, February 27th, I attended the legislative Zoom session hosted by the Washtenaw Association of School Boards. It was nice to meet all of our new legislators that represent our school districts throughout the county. I look forward to working with them in the future, and it was really nice to meet them in person. On Thursday, March 9th, the Washtenaw Association of School Boards will be hosting a legislative advocacy professional development event for all Washtenaw County School Board members and superintendents, and I look forward to attending that tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerbaugh. Mr. McMahon.
Yep, I have a couple of comments. I want to let you guys know that I've commenced meetings with the ELA and math departments at the middle school for curriculum reviews. Both their programs are expiring this year. So we are exploring options, and certainly one of the options is continuing the programs, maybe adding training. So I'm meeting with those reps first, and then we're going to explore other options throughout this semester to possibly pilot some new programs in the fall. I also want to share that we are expanding some tutoring options for students. We received some flexibility in our 11T application. That's the ESSER 3 funds, the equalization funds. And it wasn't really flexibility, but it was like a clarification in the grant language that how we can use our before and after school tutoring funds to commingle with our summer school funds. So each building right now has some options that we're going to begin planning around before or after school tutoring. Kind of depends, like high school, middle school would be after school, Paddock and Simons would be before school. So we're working out those plans now, but hopefully we can expand that opportunity real soon for some of our students. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Board member comments. Just in regards to a couple of the questions. As far as the guidance that's being sought, I would refer back to the resolution number 1, that guidance from appropriate local, state, or federal agencies about whether allowing students to check out certain books out of the library constitutes criminal activity. That's the guidance being sought. I'm not sure in regards to the other document. I just meant that I had skipped over the superintendent evaluation, planning, and goal setting section of the agenda. There's not another document. We had the strategic plan that we reviewed. There was no attachment in regards to the superintendent evaluation, planning, and goal setting. So those are my comments for now. Others?
Mr. Sislo.
Yes, Mr. Farrell.
So I'll address policy 9130. It still exists. You can submit challenges. It just temporarily pauses. The challenges are, let me go back. The policy 913 still exists. You can still submit challenges. It just, what we did in terms of the resolution simply pauses the challenges temporarily. At some point in the future, the Board of Education will address the challenges. So the policy still exists. If you want to object to certain library books, the policy still exists. Another comment that I have with regard to the high school, Milan High School parent-teacher conferences will be held on March 9th, 2023 from 3 to 6:30 p.m. in the high school cafeteria. I think Maya indicated World Down Syndrome Day is March 21st. I was asked by a community member to also share with everyone that March 21st serves as Rock Your Socks Day. Please help us get the word out to students, sports teams, etc. on wearing crazy socks in support of Down Syndrome Day. Just a brief comment on Milan Area Schools budget. Any future budget adjustments are likely to occur in the month of May or June. I just wanted to let the community know that. I also want to take a moment to thank Carrie Macchio for her 10 years of service on the Board of Education. She served as a tremendous asset to our district for over 10 years. I will miss working with her, and I wish Carrie the very best in her current and future endeavors. The last thing I want to mention is I believe Ms. Cruz was referencing the MASB evaluation tool that we use for Mr. Gearball's evaluation, and that's available on the MASB website. Thank you.
Other comments?
Mr. Sisler?
Yes, Ms. Murray.
I just want to briefly take a moment to thank the community for, to all those who were out on, I think it was February, oh gosh, I don't remember, the last weekend in February for the downtown read around. Ms. Macchio and myself were out in the community handing out books and just chatting with students and warming up in the Owl. And it was a little bit of a weird weekend because of all of the power outages and all of our downtown businesses unfortunately were not able to be open. And but we were grateful for the opportunity to be out there in the community, and I just want to thank Milan Main Street for the invitation and Ms. Macchio for not only her 10 years of service, but also inviting me to participate for that first event this year. And then thanks to our student board members for shouting out our 2 performances that are starting up this week in our 2 theater departments in MMS and MHS. So yeah, hang in there, students. You are in my thoughts. This is a grueling couple of weeks, and I can't wait to see you on stage. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Ms. Saiko.
First, I want to wish the boys swim and dive team good luck. The state swim meet starts on Friday. It's Friday, or the prelims and the finals are on Saturday, and the psych sheets came out today, and our boys are very well placed, and so I expect a very good showing from them this weekend. So I'm not changing anything that I've said previously. I believe that you are inciting violence when you post your own comments on social media pages and then you do nothing when people have horrific things to say about students, about teachers, about board members in those comments. It's no surprise that based on the comments on social media that the board started to receive the threats that we received. No surprise. And I have no doubt that none of those threats came from any member in this community, but I can't ignore the words that are used here and then the resulting behavior. And I don't think any one of us should. I also won't ignore that the way community members have doubled down and again accused teachers, I don't know about board members, but specifically teachers and administrators of grooming children. It's no surprise about that the board received these threats when that's the language that was used previously, and then we doubled down and we're just gonna keep using it and give us our own definition of what we believe grooming is. And there's no reason to video this because it'll be on YouTube, you can just get it right from there. It's okay. I also find this assumption that the board doesn't support sexual assault survivors and their recovery absolutely reprehensible. Until Ms. Macchio resigned, there were 5 female members of this board. Statistically, at least one of us was a victim of sexual assault. So to assume that no one on this board is reviewing this situation from their own place of recovery is simply wrong. And no one on this board has any obligation to tell you what their personal path has been. But for you to assume that no one else has walked in that shoes, you're wrong statistically, and you know you're wrong. We've had this conversation before. You had your my time, now it's my time. I'm not gaslighting anything.
Please.
I fully believe that the district is not in violation of any statute. I don't. I also don't believe that any community member who comes here and reads those books out loud believes that the board is in violation of that statute. Because if it was a violation of that statute to have that book in a library, then it certainly must be a violation of that statute to read it out loud at a board meeting when you know minors are present. So unless you also believe you are also violating the statute, I can't believe that you think that we're violating the statute. And yet here we are with threats about filing criminal charges, and those charges have been filed. And I'm not misrepresenting the disruption to our libraries over these challenges and these criminal threats. Because while you're right that there is a very specific exemption for librarians, there's also exemptions for other things. And yet here we are, and we still have staff that are very concerned about what's going to happen. And so I believe that the suspension of this policy was needed for all of the reasons I previously stated. Thank you, Mr. Sislo.
Thank you, Ms. Laika. Just a reminder, please. The March 22nd meeting is going to start at 5:30 for a reinstatement hearing. And then after that decision is made, we'll recess until 7 o'clock for the regular business. I do want to extend my appreciation to the 11 applicants who submitted their information to be on this board, to serve their community in this way. I appreciate them wanting to be a part of this and bridge the relationship between the board and the community. Any other questions or comments? Meeting is adjourned at 8:37.